Now that the 2022 election season is over, let's see what states are the most conservative. Believe it or not, this is a big thing for some people. A study found that about 80% of the population in the United States follows politics at least casually. Of that 80%, about 20% follow politics closely and are considered by some to be political junkies. These are the people that get all worked up over politics. We've all seen them. They're the type of people that get their identity from politics. They can't even get on a video about the best place to get Jello shots in New Orleans without throwing some kind of political comment in there. I find it weird. I mean, it's good to be informed and it's great to vote, just don't let it consume your life. Somewhere in that 80% is a line where people have decided that they won't move someplace because of how that place leans politically. To me, that's also strange. I mean, I'll move wherever I want. Doesn't matter how they vote. But that's just me. You do you. None of us are informed enough to judge people on how they see things. I mentioned that before, and then I'd get comments about how I mock places, and if I don't judge people, I'm mocking them, and where they live. Yeah, that is called joking, making light, being humorous, whatever. That's what I do. Life's too short not to have fun. And if you don't find it funny and you don't think it's humorous, that's fine too. Today we're looking at the 10 states that lean to the right the most. So if you're one of those people that only wants to live among like-minded people, these states are your best chances to make that dream come true if you're conservative. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. No conservatives or liberals were heard while filming this video. Number 10, South Carolina. South Carolina has been conservative since before South Carolina became a state. South Carolina has all the things you'd expect from a nice conservative state. They got their guns and they really don't like to go big on taxes. They have a relatively low sales tax of 6% and a relatively low state income tax. So what kind of conservatives should move to South Carolina? Well, ones that like to sweat during the summers. They like sweet tea, they like their guns, and they like pretty good beaches and barbecue. Now, one thing I should mention before we go on, just about every state, when you look at their major cities, they're not going to be as conservative as the rest of the state. So if you're about to leave that comment, well, Charleston's not conservative. Okay, yeah, most cities aren't. About 41% of South Carolina's population considers itself conservative, 17% consider them liberal, and everyone else in between is, I don't know, independent, moderate, whatever. Number 9, Utah. Any state that's pretty much run by a church better be conservative, even if it is the Mormon church. Now, this is an interesting one. In the comment section below, maybe not now that I mention it, but you always get two sides of the fence. Whenever I bring up the church and Utah, half the comments will be about, oh no, the church just totally runs this state. And then you get a bunch of people that say, oh, the church has nothing to do with the state. Okay, which is it? The state is considered one of the most religious states in the country, with about 55% of the population being Mormon. Now here's a strange one. Utah has the most restrictive firearm laws of any of the right-leaning states. And that's fine. Just because you're, into a political party doesn't mean you have to follow every single thing they go for. About 44% of Utah is considered conservative, while 17.4% is considered liberal. Number 8, Arkansas. Leaving Utah, which is one of the most educated states, to Arkansas, which is one of the least educated states, and it's one of the most conservative states. Through much of Arkansas's history, it was actually a Democrat-run state. Sometime between 1996 and 2000, Arkansas changed, because the 96 election was the last time they were considered a Democrat-controlled state. And in recent years, their elections haven't even been close. 2020, it was 62.40% voted Republican, while only 30% voted Democrat. Most states, conservative or Democrat, they tend to be kind of close to 50-50 during election season, with about 10% being a big gap. 2000 was the last time they were close, with 51% voted Republican compared to 45% voting Democrat. These days, about 44.3% of Arkansas's population sees themselves as conservatives, while only 14.2% leans liberal. Number 7, Tennessee. Tennessee is a state that's in transition. They've been moving closer and closer towards liberalism, but still holding on to the conservative side. It's like the conservatives are still there en masse, but it just seems like there's becoming fewer in the middle people, fewer moderates. Tennessee is a state with no income tax, and that's usually a big thing for conservative states. I mean, they don't have exclusivity to it. Washington has no state income tax, but Tennessee does have the lowest property tax in the nation at 0.74%. Another strange thing about Tennessee, atheism is kind of picking up steam throughout the United States. More and more people are pulling away from the church. Not in Tennessee, it's kind of going the other direction. 44.5% of Tennessee residents claim they are conservatives, while 20% claim they are liberals. Number 6, West Virginia. West Virginia is about as red as you get. Still, I mean, they've waned a little bit in recent years, but they've been a very red state for a very, very long time. Those coal miners tend to stay away from that whole liberal thing. One thing I really like about West Virginia is their governor, Governor Jim Justice. The man is 71 years old, he's 6'7", and he dropped an F-bomb at a COVID press conference and then claimed it was a technical glitch. He then went on to take his bulldog named Baby Dog to the State of the State address at the West Virginia State House, held the dog's butt up to the cameras, and suggested Bette Midler come to West Virginia and kiss his dog's butt. Gotta love West Virginia. 45.1% of West Virginia's population consider themselves conservative. Now, side note to this one, I've also seen it at 49.9%. But the study I'm looking at has them at 45.1%, with only 10% of the state considering themselves liberal. So they've got a lot of in-between people there. Number 5, Wyoming. Believe it or not, Wyoming has actually voted for Democrat presidents. Lyndon B. Johnson and FDR. That's it. You got to go back prior to like the roaring 20s to find them voting for someone that wasn't a Republican. Now, their state house and things like that have on occasion had Democrats, but for the most part, this is a very red state. They like their guns and they really don't like the federal government getting involved in their business. 46% of Wyoming residents identify as conservative, while only 14% identify as being liberal. Number 4, Louisiana. Louisiana's got a long history in voodoo, a long history of French influence, long history of crime, long history of extreme poverty, and a long history of getting hit by hurricanes. Louisiana is known for its very lax gun laws, and they're not killing people with taxes. These are always great, and they tend to happen in conservative states more than liberal states. 46% of Louisiana identify as conservative, while only 16% identify as liberal. Number 3, South Dakota. You know, I'm a little surprised about this one. I know they're a red state, they're conservative, but I didn't think they would be this high on this list. I honestly didn't think they'd make it into the top 10, but here they are. When you look at their numbers and their stats, they've been sliding to the right since the 1970s, and it's been paying dividends for some time. A lot of businesses have moved to South Dakota. It's not that crowded, but they're still drawing in businesses. One thing I find bizarre whenever I mention South Dakota, a bunch of people always got to comment on how good looking their governor is. Like I've said in past videos, she is attractive, but she's more than just a good-looking woman that's staying at the governor's mansion. She's very sharp. She has a good presence. Whenever I see her doing a speech, she's got it down pat. Now, the good-looking part did come into play at an early age. She graduated from Hamlin High School in 1990 and was the South Dakota Snow Queen. Every state has something like that. Where I grew up, for the Tournament of Roses and the Rose Bowl and all that, they had the Rose Queen. In Iowa, I kid you not, they have something called like the Dairy Queen or something like that, but one of the perks of getting chosen as the queen, they do a sculpture of you in butter. Yep. At the state fair, you gotta sit there while a guy sculpts you in butter. I guess in South Dakota, you get a snowman made out of you. Who knows? But 46.4% of South Dakota residents identify as conservative, while 12% identify as liberal. Number 2, Alabama. If you didn't see this one coming, congratulations. You've broken away from paying attention to politics. Alabama has been a red state since forever. It's in the South. They have a tendency to do that. Very conservative, very gun-friendly, and they tend to be on the religious side. Not saying anything's wrong with it. About 86% of Alabama's population identifies as Christian, mostly being Protestant. Louisiana has pretty low taxes on sales and state income tax, so that's pretty good. 47.2% of Alabama's population identify as conservative, while only 9% identify as liberal. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link down below. There's also a link for Home and Money if you're thinking about moving. This is a website that has all kinds of features for you while you're thinking about buying a house, including getting in contact with a real estate agent in whatever area you're moving to. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Mississippi. hold the phones. How'd this happen? Mississippi is at the #1 spot, and it's not something that's completely negative. I mean, if you're a hardcore liberal, yes, this is negative, but no, it's not negative. Mississippi comes in #1. They've been conservative longer than they've been a state. If you look at their election history since Kennedy, the only other person that's been a Democrat they voted for was Jimmy Carter, but the entire South voted for him, I think.
A few minutes later.
Yeah, I looked it up. He won the entire South along with Texas, Missouri, even up in Ohio and Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Jimmy Carter won some states that are solid red these days. Mississippi is one of the few hardcore right-leaning states that has a state income tax. Now, it's below the national average. It's 5%, which most of the country has around 6% is the average, but they still have a state income tax. Now, it's got a whole lot of poverty, whole lot of mosquitoes, and humidity in the summer. I am kind of glad Mississippi showed up on a list that isn't completely negative. I get all kinds of grief from people from Mississippi every single time I mention them in a video. Mostly it's because I continually call it Mississippi instead of Mississippi. Now, I gotta tell you, it's kind of sick and twisted, but I really enjoy it when people get worked up over that. 50.2% of Mississippi residents identify as being conservative, while only 10.9% identify as being liberal. That's quite a jump. I mean, Alabama was 47.2%. So there you have it. Mississippi is the most conservative state in the Union. All right, everyone, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.